Hi everyone, this is Pete Barusik. I want to welcome you to this edition of the Weathered Athlete Podcast, a place for us to honor those athletes that refuse to go quietly into the night. As a weathering triathlete and a physical therapist, I will spend my time talking with those athletes that continue to make the necessary repairs and continue to move forward. They may have a few cracks in their foundation or a squeaky step, and their patinas may continue to fade, but they are no less glorious than years prior. In fact, I feel they have more heart and resolve as they have weathered and can provide the pathway and set the standard that we should all live by. My goal is to determine what sets these individuals apart from the rest of society. After the discussion is over, I encourage you to stick around to hear a breakdown from a physical therapist perspective on how this weathering athlete is able to keep moving forward. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave me a comment, and share with your friends. Today I'm honored to be joined for mile number 16 by a triathlete, triathlon coach, and director of E3 Endurance, and someone I have known for 5 years. His name is Matt Clancy. Part of the thing I love the most about doing this podcast is being able to take a deep dive into people's backgrounds. Over the years, most of our conversations have related to race schedules, fundraising, bike upkeep, or techniques learned as it relates to any clinics that I've attended that he has given. I am so thankful for the time Matt afforded me and his willingness to provide insight into the evolution of his athletic career and the creation of E3 Endurance. We take a deep dive into his journey over the years, including things that made him a better athlete as he worked towards getting his pro card, and how his sports psychology degree provides a foundation for self-growth, and as he works to assist other athletes he trains. As you will hear, Matt provides great proof on how if you're willing to set realistic goals, push those boundaries, and never stop, anything is possible. I hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, what's going on, Matt? How you doing?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, I appreciate you taking a little time with me.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, when I decided to put this thing together, you offer such a great perspective as an athlete yourself, as a coach, and then also as a business owner, especially during this time, dealing
Sure.
with what you're doing. And unfortunately, you're in my same age group, I believe. So are you 50 yet?
45, 49.
Oh, 45. Okay. So I have a couple more years, right? Because how old are you?
47.
Okay, good. So you stay in that age group. I need to upgrade. I don't want you in my age group.
Okay. What age group are you in?
I turned 50 last year, so I'm in the 50 to 54.
Oh, I'll join you. I'll be in there when I turn 50. You'll be 50, what, 3?
Yeah. So I have a couple years where, not like I can compete now anyways, I just try to get to the finish line.
I hear you. Man. Finish line's a lot further away than it used to be.
Yes. Yeah. So, hey, it's interesting that, I've known you for, I want to say close to 5 years now, but really we've never really talked outside of, I come in, I ask you, you fix up my bike, I've done some clinics with you, but I really don't know your background or your history. So I'd love to just kind of dive into that if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So how long have you owned E3?
Well, E3 has taken a couple different shapes over the years, but since 2007, I've been coaching in my own business on my own. Obviously having some assistant coaches and along the way. But yeah, once I finished my master's degree in 2007, the goal was to go out on my own and do my own thing. I used to coach with another organization from 2002 until 2007 for 5 years. And I learned a lot, and they were great coaches. But I felt I had something different to offer, and I wanted to go a different route than just being a standard triathlon coach. Because I thought of myself more of a single sport coach, and I like to work with athletes of all three sports, not just triathletes. And I don't know, I just wanted to I just had my own little vision, and so I started it here at the house, and it's just grown and evolved into many different things, and it currently is being E3 Endurance, and we've been running the same thing, the same format or entity that it is today we've been doing that since 2000, end of 2014.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, my background, I started getting into, I played regular sports growing up, like most of us did. And triathlon didn't really exist in the mainstream, and definitely not in the Northeast, in the DC area where I grew up.
Okay.
I played football. I threw shot put, discus. I dabbled in all the other sports, baseball, wrestling. Played tennis for a couple of years. And once high school ended, our size guys, I wasn't 5'8", 160 pounds. I'm not going on and play. I was pretty good. I was a decent football player in high school, but those skills aren't going to take me to college.
Yeah.
No matter what division, was calling. And so I just lifted weights. I just ran a little bit, tried to stay healthy. All my roommates or friends were athletes. They played football or hockey at the collegiate level. So I was always in and around athletics. And training.
Yeah.
And I found running just by, coincidence or happenstance that, late one night hanging out with these football players in college, there was a pamphlet at 2:00 in the morning at a Eaton Park. It's like a all night, all you can eat buffet kind of place in West Virginia University. And it was for a 10K up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I was drinking that much, but by 2:00 things usually die down. But for some reason, when I was checking out, I grabbed it. I was like, I want to do this. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, I do. I was always running. I mean, I just always ran.
Yeah.
Not as a runner. I didn't compete in cross country, and I didn't do running as track and field. But I did keep in shape for just here and there, and I would always during the summer just go run for miles out of boredom, really. And I saw that I got that flyer, and I was like, all right, I'm going to start training for this. So I just started running, doing a couple things, going to the track, making up stuff to figure out how to run this 10K. And went up there, and I don't know, I ran maybe 52 minutes, 54 minutes, somewhere in that 9-minute pace, whatever that is.
Nice.
And I loved every minute of it. I thought it was just fantastic. And it was a way to compete when you lose the ability to compete after high school sports for so many athletes. And it wasn't shortly after that I did a half marathon. I did a 15K in town. And then it was a 15K. I ran that 10K in Pittsburgh. I did a 15K in Morgantown. And then I did a marathon. So when I got into the sport, I got the Runner's World magazine. That was popular back then. And as a subscriber to Runner's World magazine, you get all these mail-ins from other companies that have to do with running to try to get you to do other stuff. And the popular program, Leukemia Lymphoma Society, Team in Training.
Yeah.
You've ever heard of that group? Yeah. I mean, obviously you would. It's very similar to Crohn's and colitis, where I had to raise, I want to say it was $2,500 back in 1995. Wow. I was a senior in college, and I could go over to Paris, France, and run the Paris Marathon. It was $2,500 is a lot of money back 25 years ago or whatnot, but it wasn't to some degree. When you think about all the money you raised for Crohn's and colitis, as a college kid, I was like, I don't know how to raise money. I don't like to ask for things. But I wanted to go run that marathon. I wanted to go to France. I'd never been out of the country before. And I took French for all the way through college since middle school. So I could speak the language. And I started training, doing all sorts of weightlifting and cardio and long runs and 10 miles around a track and just everything I could do. And I think that's where I started to develop my mindset for how do I do this? Because there wasn't a lot of marathon coaches. There weren't triathlon coaches back in the day. It was really just before everything exploded. You had to figure things out on your own. I'd have a couple books here and there,
Yeah.
and then just start using logic and what would be a good idea here, what would not be a good idea here, and made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I was able to do it without getting injured, and it really challenged me to talk to people and ask for money and do things that I don't currently do in as E3 endurance, but it definitely changed how I interacted with the world, and with people who, I don't want to say change the world, but make the world move or happen. And I was able to raise the money, and I went over there, and I had a great experience. I mean, it was one of the most challenging things in my life. I've never, like an Ironman or something you've never done before. Just being in that environment and what you learn in that, the last 10K for me was the hardest thing I'd ever done, physically, and that was a great experience. Across that finish line was just overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of running experience, and I obviously didn't have a lot of racing experience. But when I crossed that finish line, I was like, man, there's something to this. I'm getting something out of this that nothing else in my life provides.
Yeah. So
I'm going to go explore this some more. And I did. I ran another marathon, and the organization, being a part of a program that, changes people's lives with leukemia, and that, that letter or the fundraising campaign I did would change not just my life in terms of exercise and running a coaching company, but it would change my life on all aspects. That's how I met my wife. Eventually, was through this team and training program. So it had a big impact in my life. So it's a great. When I look back, I think I'm happy that I was presented that opportunity, and that little pamphlet at 2:00 in the morning, at an eat park. It's redirected my whole life, and I don't. I mean, you're talking to a lot of people, and I don't know if I ever talk to people in a way that you really find out how they came to be where they are. But that's always been of interest to me. I was a journalism major in undergrad, and I just love watching things or listening to podcasts or documentaries. I love finding out how people got to where they were. And I love that the people who are telling the story know when that fork in the road was, or where that fork in the road was. And so, that's where it changed for me. And, it's just silly little 10K. And for a lot of people, running a 10K or doing an Ironman or running a marathon, it may change their life. Just a lot of degrees, but it redirected my life to where I am today.
Yeah, it's amazing how you're right. One decision kind of just sets you down a path, and you think about it. I had talked to Coach Karen back. I did her swim clinic 5 years ago in January. Carrie Rabondo said, "Hey, you got to go to this clinic." And I'm sitting on my couch watching the football game, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to go to this clinic." I had no idea what triathlon was. Didn't even know if I could swim across the pool, and trust me, I couldn't swim across the pool. And it's amazing how just getting off my couch and going to that swim clinic is really put me in this spot here today, 5 years later. And it's just amazing. And I think about it all the time. What if I didn't get off my couch? One, I probably wouldn't know you. I wouldn't know Walt. I wouldn't have done anything that we did over these past years. So it's amazing how that one step just pushes you in a direction, and it's like it's meant to be.
Right. Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's incredible. So you were a journalism major. So how'd you get from that full marathon to where you are now into triathlon and then being a coach? How did that transition kind of happen?
Yeah. That's a good question. And I'm going to try to make a long story short and a boring story interesting.
Yeah.
But, marathons are hard on the body, but I loved it. So I did a lot of them in a short period of time in not respecting, I started running marathons when I was 21.
Okay.
I stopped running marathons when I was probably 23. I did about 6 or 7 in a short time frame just because I wanted more and more and more. And that just caused a lot of issues with overtraining and injuries. And as I left college and I moved out west, I moved to California, and I found the sport of triathlon in this little town of Los Gatos near San Francisco. Went and watched the first race. One of my coworkers' girlfriend was doing a triathlon. So I had seen triathlon before, and I knew about it in the marathon world, and it was intriguing. And when I went and watched one, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Yeah. I don't know why, but I want to do it. I didn't grow up as a swimmer. I didn't grow up as a runner, and rode my bike like any kid rides his bike. I never trained.
Yeah.
So I moved, and then ended up going to Los Angeles to do triathlon, to get into the sport. And that was the capital of triathlon back in the day before Boulder became what it is today. Southern California was it.
Okay.
And that's where I was going to be. And I went there knowing nothing, just knowing I wanted to get into the sport. And I got myself a bike that I couldn't pay for, had to get a loan to get a triathlon bike. Yeah. It was $2,600. I remember this. Everything in my life seems to be about $2,500.
Yeah.
So it was a $2,600 tri bike. It had what was now called Altegra on it, cool wheels, 650s aluminum, and it was awesome. It was way above my abilities at the time, but I knew I wouldn't outgrow. At least I thought. And I just started just working out, going to the pool, riding my bike. And this was all solo. I didn't know anybody in Los Angeles besides the people I worked with, and none of them knew anything about the sport. And I just I did my first triathlon in San Dimas, of all places, in eastern Los Angeles. And it was a sprint, lake swim. And I had no business being there, but I showed up. And about 50 yards into that, it's a race. Yeah. It's the first race, so I'm going to go after it. All the things I learned about marathoning, I figured wouldn't apply here. So went after the swim and just sprinted. And by the time I hit 50 to 100 yards, I don't know where it was, but it was over. I mean, it was over. I literally was like, I'm going to drown. And it was everything I could do to finish that swim. I literally was on my back doing side stroke. I don't know how I got myself out of that predicament. But all I had to do was get to the shoreline. I got to the shore, got out. I don't remember taking much away from like patting myself on the back or just being glad I survived it, but I just moved forward.
Yeah.
Got onto the bike, and that was more comfortable. It's easier to manage, and the run was challenging because it's running off the bike, like most of us when we do our first couple races or in our first season. It's not a normal thing to do, is to run off once you come off the bike. But again, across that finish line, and that experience just somehow was everything I needed where I was at that point in my life. Yeah. It gave me, it wasn't so much a competition because it wasn't very competitive, even though you're in an environment where you're competing. I liked, and this will go back to the last question you sent me in the email. What the hashtag would be. It was exploration for me. I was just learning. I was trying to figure things out, and I was figuring a lot out about myself in those times, those challenges. Whether or not I was truly reflective at that moment, I just, I don't know. There was less noise in that environment, and I could figure things out. I could be alone, and that's, I think, where I enjoyed training and running as a youth, was that I could just get away from the noise and think for myself and figure me out. Yeah. So I got hooked, just like marathon running. I'm like, oh, this is great. I did 7 triathlons that first year. I even did a half Ironman,
Okay.
which was miserable. This was before, this was like right around the time they had gels. They just came out, but nobody knew anything about nutrition with regard to long distance or long course triathlon. Yeah. And I bonked pretty good.
Yeah,
to say the least. But again, I just love doing difficult things.
Yeah.
There's so much reward in that, and doing the try at Ridgewood, the hospice try. That's a difficult race. I mean, the run's hard. It's hotter than heck, and I know it's no Ironman, but it's a difficult thing to do, and I don't know why that brings me such pleasure. But to answer your question, I just loved it. I got into it in Los Angeles and competed in a bunch of races, and all the names that we grew up with were in and around that scene, especially if you race down in San Diego. And I eventually did an Ironman. I mean, I always wanted to do an Ironman because that's what I watched. We all did on NBC that Saturday in December. But back then, there were only 2 North American races. You could qualify for Kona back in 1998 at Memphis in May Olympic distance triathlons.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was thinking about traveling there. I just didn't have the means to travel across the country at that time to do an Olympic and qualify for Kona. And there were a lot more spots available. Yeah. There were a lot less races. But I ended up getting injured training for all these marathons during this little triathlon onset career of mine. So I took some time off, and then I was looking for a race that I could get into, an Ironman. There were maybe 5 or 6 in the world at that time. One of them was Ironman Switzerland.
Okay.
I don't know why. It just happened to fall at a certain time, and it was a good vacation for the family who were still back on the East Coast. And I just said, I want to do Ironman Switzerland.
Okay.
And I did that in 1999. Again, wow, completely. You got to figure out the training. I know Dave Scott had an Ironman book.
Okay.
Mostly weightlifting. He didn't have like triathlon workouts like he would today. The stuff he does today in comparison to when he was winning Ironmans to help people nowadays is so much more advanced than what he was doing himself. A lot of the workouts, he would just overtrain or train more than the other guy. Yeah. And that's how he would win these things. I mean, he was just a monster when it came to training. So I had his book, and I gleaned a lot of information from that, went over there, raced. And like most of us, we just want to get across the finish line. And that was all I needed. I punched that tick, I did that. And I was happy with that 4-year triathlon career.
Yeah.
And I moved back to the East Coast, and it was done. That was it. That was triathlon, and I still exercised. I still trained a little bit, but I really had retired, if you want to think of it like that. But 2 things happened when I moved back to DC. Was I started training with a former high school friend who was a national caliber duathlete, incredible athlete. And I always thought the world of him, and to be training with him or spending time with him, it kind of brought me up a level. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm almost as fast as this guy on the bike. I mean, I can train with him. He's on another level, but I can stay with him. And I started coaching Little League football.
Okay.
I was 26, 27 years old, maybe. And I loved coaching Little League football. I don't know why. These were kids, I don't know, 10, 12 years old, maybe 5th to 7th graders. I have no idea. I can't even remember. They were young. And I was this is funny because I'm not going to talk about like the Carolina Panthers or anything. I was the offensive coordinator. It was all my buddies from high school. There was 5 of us. I was the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach. And so I designed plays, which I used to do when I was in 1st grade. I used to draw football plays and stuff on pieces of the paper, and the it's kind of funny how life brings us back
Yeah.
to where we were. And I just love designing football plays. Stop doing that when you reach a certain age. But then
Yeah.
after that 15 years, I just enjoyed it again. And working with the quarterback or the leader of the team was a joy, because not only was I teaching him how to throw the football and to run the plays, for some reason started kind of managing his role as a leader on the team and how to not manipulate, that's seems derogatory, but how to engineer the atmosphere and the mood of the other 10 kids on the offense. And I spent a lot of time doing that with him versus how to throw a spiral and stuff. And these are 12-year-old boys. They understand stuff, and they're athletic kids. So in those 2 years or so of coaching Little League and training with an exceptional biker and runner, I kind of revitalized my desire to race. And I didn't race in 2 years. It was just not of interest to me until the end of those 2 years that I went and did a triathlon again. And I had a job in the music. I was working for a company that made music for up and coming or kind of fringe musicians. Okay. You might hear some of their songs on the radio, but mostly these were your local musicians. But they would make CDs and they would sell them at their concerts or whatnot, or they could sell them online, or they could sell them at a music store. And I would manage the packaging and the process and the artwork and all the stuff for these artists.
Yeah.
Well, I lost that job, and I didn't really know what to do. My journalism major really didn't have anything to do with it. I wasn't really excited or jazzed up about it. But I like triathlon. I like sports. So there was an opening at a tri shop outside of DC. High-end tri shop. I believe it still exists today. And the bikes in there were hot dog. They were just fantastic. And back then, we sold Pinarello, Colnago, Quintana Roo. There were some names that I don't even remember. Lightspeed, when Lightspeed was huge, soft ride bikes without the seat post. And they were, so the guy, one of the managers there was a engineer, used to design and work with soft ride bikes, and somehow made his way over to DC, and he was a bike fitter too. And he taught me pretty much all I know now about bike fits, or what I knew then about bike fits and fixing bikes. So I was a mechanic, the bike fitter there, sold stuff, sold all the equipment, knew all about wetsuits and tri-shoes and you name it. So back in the day with bikes, like your Fuji behind you, and the majority of high-end bikes, or any nice bike back then, was a frame only. Yeah. You could buy a bike that's built up, but it was like $50,000. But any bike that was nice, you had to measure the athlete and order the handlebars, the seat post, all the different parts, the crank length, to build a bike that would fit this guy perfectly. And then we would build the bike from scratch to the frame and then fit the guy on it, or fit the athlete, woman, guy. And so that's kind of where I came from, bike fitting world. And to some degree, I still use a lot of that information, even though I've gone on to certifications with bike fitting companies. So I had that. I love that job. I loved working with athletes again, even though I was working on bikes and selling bikes and doing that stuff. I just loved being in that world. It revitalized me back into the sport, training with my good friend and then coaching kids. Yeah. And I would give advice to regular athletes because, again, back in 1999, there weren't a lot of people doing Ironmans. There just weren't many opportunities. I think Lake Placid might have came out. Florida had been around. And you had You had Canada. Those are the 3 North American Ironmans back in the early 2000s. So I started helping some people that would walk in the shop, going for bike rides or doing bricks or how to train and things like that. And I wanted to get my master's degree. When I finally figured out this is what I like in life, I like sports, I like coaching and helping people, and because of the Little League, I love the mental aspect of triathlon. I love the mental aspect of the leadership of working with other teammates. And I was like, oh, sports psychology. That sounds like a good degree. The reasons why I do the sport aren't because I like beating people or because I like competing that much. It's what I learn and what I get from me. Yeah. It gives me so much, knowledge and introspection. And I know sports psychology is helpful to that. And that's, if I want to work with other athletes, I might be beneficial to understand really what sports psychology means when it comes to triathlon. So I moved down to North Carolina in Wilmington to want to get away from the cold at DC because I wanted to train again and get back into the sport. And North Carolina had a great triathlon series. Back then, Set Up Events was the only game in town. They had maybe 10 races.
Okay.
In the whole state, and that was it. Everybody went to every race. So races were packed, 500 to 1,500 people at every race. You knew everybody. It was like a circus, a caravan. It just moved to different cities every couple weeks. And I got back to racing and being competitive. And I still worked. I had a job at a bike shop. And I was still in that environment, and I was getting better. Once I, got fit on my bike, I turned into a different athlete. And that's why I'm so passionate about fitting. And we can maybe talk about that sometime. Yeah. But once I was properly fit on my bike by the guy who helped inspire me to do bike fittings, repositioned my bike, and it changed how fast I could ride a bike and how fast I ran off the bike. And when I got down to Wilmington, even before then, I started seeing improvement. Now this time I'm 27, 28 years old. And I'm getting pretty fast for whatever reason. I'm training smarter. I'm training with better athletes. I'm spending more time. I've spent more years in the sport. So I've built up more of an aerobic engine or endurance base. And I started to get competitive in my age group. And I started seeing these guys at the elite level going and racing against them. And I was interested on why are these guys racing in the elite category? Mm-hmm. And how do you get into the elite category? So I would go on the USA Triathlon, and it's like, how does someone become an elite or a pro? And back then it had 3 criteria. What the 3 were? You had to finish top 10. Yeah. Of 3 races that had more than 500 people in it. That was one of the criteria. And it was 2003 where I think I did that at White Lake, maybe. Okay. Finished 9th. I was like, oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. Because it was just it was just like 500 to 1,500 people used to be at Wrightsville Beach. That was a big deal. And it was everybody. It wasn't like now where the guys who win the Greensboro races are from Greensboro and the guys who win Charlotte are from Charlotte. It's everybody in this state. And this is a pretty competitive state. So I placed top 10 at White Lake. And the funny thing is, Pete, cut me off to ask other questions, but the night before I did that, I was training. We were swimming back and forth between a couple of those piers, the swim exit and the swim entrance. Have you ever done that race?
No, I have not done White Lake.
It's a great venue. It's a little tough to get to. Just crystal water. It's probably 7 o'clock at night, and I'm going back and forth. And I've been in the sport for now, this is 2003, since 96, about 7 years. Yeah. I'm working in a bike shop. I'm working on trying to go to school to get my master's, but I'm in kind of this no man's land of, I'm getting my late 20s. I'm not making any money. And I'm doing the sport. And I'm sitting there on the dock after swimming, getting ready for this race. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Yeah. This isn't fulfilling my life in other ways. I'm going to be 45 years old, and I do sprint triathlons, and I'll still be where I'm at today. Yeah. And that's not good enough for me. So at that night, I had kind of made a decision. I'm out. I need to go get a real job and have a real life.
Yeah.
I kind of made that decision, and I was dating a girl at the time, and I think I even told her that. Next day, I get ninth place. Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, this has been a bad gig.
Yeah.
So let's keep doing this. So there, I honestly forget the second race. I got ninth place again. It was another big race. Yeah. I got ninth again, and I was like, all right. So now I'm starting to look at the other races in series. And again, there's only a couple races. So Riceville Beach comes up, and I was living in Wilmington at the time, and it's the big one, 1,500 folks, and everybody's fast. And sure enough, I end up ninth place there.
Wow!
And the guy who won was a pro.
Okay.
At the time, and I was talking to him at the end of the race, going, just because I kind of knew him from racing here and there and training over the state of North Carolina. Great, super guy. I thought he was on another level. I mean, just like, how did I come anywhere close to this guy? So I got my criteria, but great. So I can race elites here in North Carolina, or I can get my pro card or whatnot. But then I found a race up in Delaware in October. And I was like, man, if I can get ninth place in North Carolina, I bet I can do anything anywhere else. Because North Carolina, in my relationship to triathlon in Southern California, where it was the Mecca, I thought North Carolina was much more competitive during that time with the races we had and just the state in general. I mean, there were just some spectacular athletes. So I go up to Cape Henlopen in Delaware, sprint triathlon, and I win the whole thing. Nice. And there were some guys that up there were just made me nervous just standing next to them at the starting line. And I ended up winning that race. And I was like, great. I'm going for it. So I send in my stuff to USAT, get my pro card. So I'm going to race pro now.
Yeah.
Like getting, it's like you got Tiger Woods and then you got the guy missing the cut plus 12. That's me. But I got my card. So I was in the sport, even though I was just about to change my life. Things changed. So I got my pro card. Right when I got it, I got accepted to. No, I didn't get accepted. I took my GRE. I was going to UNC Greensboro for sports psychology. That's where I'm going to be. Yeah. Things are starting to align, and but as I was in Wilmington, I started coaching triathletes. Not the backtrack. I started coaching 4-team in training.
Okay. And
I was the guy in town that had done an Ironman, which put me on a different level. Well, I was like, I don't tell them the whole story about my Ironman.
Yeah.
It's not that impressive.
You finished.
You shouldn't be listening to anything I say. But so I started running practices for this fundraising organization. Not much dissimilar to what I still do today.
Yeah.
Group trainings and getting them to where their goal is. And we had a lot of fun. I raised a ton of money for leukemia and lymphoma. And again, it verified that sports psychology is where I want to go.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. But again, I wanted to get my degree because I felt like I could have done a lot better at undergrad.
Yeah.
And I did okay. But I felt like I wanted to go back and do it again and get my master's. So I took my GRE, came up here to Greensboro, did a couple interviews, and I got accepted to the program, which was exciting because UNCG was one of the best programs in the country for sports psychology and practical sports psychology, which I was really interested in working with athletes, not just in talking about motivation and prescribing and doing research and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my wife, to this day, I met her through Team in Training. She ran the chapter here in Greensboro, and I was the coach down in Wilmington, and we were set up and met at an event. And so when I look back at that flyer again, here comes Team in Training out of that. Well, meet my wife out of Team in Training through working with that organization, because it fulfilled so much in me that I wanted to share that and give that back. So I think I'm nearing the answer to your question. So I come up here.
You're good.
Sandra is in Greensboro. I'm like, she's wonderful. And I just got accepted UNCG. I was like, oh, this is going to work out great.
Yeah.
For me. And it did. I came to Greensboro and obviously things went well with us.
Yeah.
I continue to race, and as I'm in the master's degree, I'm learning a lot. I'm taking business classes as well. I'm coaching with this coaching group where I'm learning a lot from these other coaches who have been coaching for quite some time. I'm teaching weightlifting. I'm teaching swimming. I'm learning all these skill sets while coaching athletes remotely or online. And then I'm even developing online. I'm developing statewide health and fitness programs for high schoolers.
Okay.
As an employee at UNCG, so I'm doing all these little things that I don't realize what they add up to or what they mean. And my last class last semester at UNCG, I took a business class, and the whole class was around, you're going to start a business. You need to come up with a business plan. And every week we would talk about certain aspects of business, and all the people in here they were already working for companies. They were older and had jobs, and they were just trying to be better at their jobs. And they had a lot more answers than I did, but I could take what they knew and apply it to my plan. And I developed E3. I constructed E3 from that plan, not really understanding all the different parts I was doing at the time would be really the business plan or the business model. So I graduated in 2007, UNCG, and I had already started working with athletes professionally on a personal level. And then I just created a new name, had a company design a logo, build a website. And that's the long version of how this all kind of came to be. And it wasn't E3 Endurance back in 2007. It was maybe 10 people that I was coaching online. Started a master's group that had not even. I was teaching spin classes. I was just doing things to be in front of people and get comfortable with coaching or directing and all that stuff. But once I felt confident enough to believe in myself and believe in what I was projecting or saying would help people without hurting them, making sure that, sending them down the right path, or the things we're doing are proper and right. And I know that because I know that now. And I know what's not right.
Yeah.
I started building these programs into the company, like a master swim, which we had 2 people. Yeah. We had 2 people for 3 people for a year. A lot of people would have quit after that. I should have. But I don't know. I just, it's similar to Ironman.
Yeah.
If you're going to start something, I mean, the whole business plan and doing all that stuff was a start, and I wasn't going to quit.
Yeah.
Even when things got hard, similar to like mile 14 of the marathon at Ironman. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out how to get to this finish line. It may not be pretty, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I just kept doing it, and I had no advertising budget. I could barely, it wasn't like the business was a huge profit. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and a lot of personal time. And I knew it would take time.
Yeah.
And I just kept putting the time in, and it kept growing, and things started evolving. And so that's how I got into the coaching business.
See, that's amazing. See, those are the things that I love about this is, you don't have time to hear those stories. And I think as far as you as a business owner, I think, people are intimidated getting into this type of sport. And the fact that, one, if they learn that, Matt wasn't always the superstar that he is now out there just crushing everybody else on the course, that, you have to get there somehow. And the first step is just getting on your bike or getting in the water and just doing it. And eventually you figure it out. Not every mile is perfect. Trust me, not every mile is perfect on the way, but it still gets you 1 mile closer to the finish line. That's all that matters.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you didn't get off the couch.
Yeah.
How do you get to the finish line if you don't start somewhere?
You don't. So with your sports psychology degree, which I didn't know, which is great. So what are you taking into account, like working with athletes over the age of 50?
Yeah. The answer is time. And that is pretty dynamic. How much time do you have to train? How much time do you have to recover? You've been around this planet for a long time.
Yeah.
So how much time do you have toward your goal? How much time would make you happy in completing this goal? Those are the biggest questions. That if you don't start from there, it's hard to move forward.
Yeah.
For athletes over 50, most of them have a job that requires more than 40 hours a week. They got family life that requires as much time as they do work. When can they work out? How long can they work out? And what are they trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And how much time do we have to train them to get to what would satisfy them and their goal? Are the biggest questions. And once you start answering those questions, it's almost like the training volume or the workouts, they almost define themselves. Because if you have 8 hours a week to train and you're training for a half Ironman, that's going to take 6 hours. Yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you look at it. Like, yeah. How can I only train 8 hours a week if I'm trying to do a race in 6? And how much time have they been in the sport is key. Like I talked about, I'd spent 5 or 6 years doing triathlon to no avail, but at a certain point, you put in enough time, you're going to improve.
Yeah.
And if you're just coming off the couch and you want to do a half Ironman in 6 hours, and you've got 3 months to do it, but you only have 8 hours to train. Wow, where do we start? That's always the tough part, and that's the interesting part of coaching is trying to solve these problems.
Yeah. So then, as far as like the psychology part, it's hard to. So we got that time. You set up the program, but getting people to stick to the program. How does that work? Because again, we want miracles. We don't want it tomorrow. We want it yesterday.
Oh, yeah. So there was a thing we dealt with a lot in school was realistic goal setting. And I think that's one of the things I do that's sports psychology related that doesn't seem like it is. But yeah. When you're talking to someone and they're trying to do the 6 hour half Ironman and with 8 hours of training, as an optimist, as a coach, my first thing I do is go, yeah, awesome. What a challenge. I mean, it's not like, hey, I'm going to start training January 1st for a December half Ironman. All I want to do is finish. And I've got I'm going to train 12 hours a week. It's like, oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
Anybody could do that. But when folks throw curveballs at you, I got to control that desire to go, I think that's awesome. Because I almost drowned in my first race, and
Yeah.
I was not prepared, but I loved it.
Yeah.
So you got to remove yourself from the task at hand or the job at hand, and go, okay, well, how realistic is this goal? And I'll explain really what it takes, depending on where the athlete's coming from, what his strength and limitations are as a swimmer, biker, and runner, how much time we're going to need to develop this, and lay out, in my professional opinion, what would be realistic of expectations, in the mindset that, I think you can train for 8 hours. That's great. If that's all you have, let's utilize all the time you have. But in the amount of time we have until the event, here's what we can accomplish. And it may not be the 6-hour mark, but we can get you across the finish line, keep you healthy.
Yeah.
We can learn a bunch of skills that down the road you can take and keep working at this goal or chipping away at this goal. So realistic goals are first. The second thing would be short-term and intermediate goals. The long-term goal is already defined.
Yeah.
But training for an Ironman or a half Ironman or even short course races, depending on where you're coming from, it may take a while. So how do you can't, it's hard to train all year long, because mentally and physically we just go up and down, and there's times where we just don't feel like doing it, or we're under recovering or overtraining, and working towards something for so long is hard. Kind of get burnt out, because most people, because they want to do this so bad that they think about it every day, every workout. They use it to reinforce getting out of bed in the morning, to keep them accountable for doing stuff that maybe today they really don't feel like doing. And that just leads to fatigue, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
So those intermediate and short-term goals are helpful to say, all right, we've got 6 weeks. We're going to work to do this short race or this time trial. We want to be able to run 8 minutes for a 5K in practice. Set those things up so they could focus on those things for a short period of time, while those things are working them toward their long-term goal.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So then how about like for strength training? Are you building a lot of that into your programs for your athletes?
I used to.
Okay.
This is what's interesting. As coaches, I try not to get out of my jurisdiction.
Okay.
And the thing with being a triathlon coach, we're asked to do a lot. I mean, you have to coach somebody how to swim, how to bike, and how to run. It's a lot of information. And I have a lot of certifications in all those single sports, and I cover all those 3 sports. I have not taken a large interest personally in getting strength and conditioning coaching certifications. I used to work at a gym, and I used to train people at a gym in gym settings. But so I have experience with strength training, and I like it, and I could easily prescribe it. But without having the certifications, I back away from it.
Okay.
Because not that I feel like I'm going to give misinformation. That's not my level of expertise. It's kind of like if, like a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Like, how can I help? My back's hurting, this and that. What do you suggest? That's not my area of expertise. I'm going to put you on to someone who will give you much better information. So in terms of strength training, I emphasize it and I encourage it.
Yeah.
But if you're not with the person, them doing the exercise, strength training can lead to a lot of injuries if the athlete's not doing it correctly, if they're doing the improper load, the improper volume, sets or reps. They could be training their body to do something completely different than what they want to do when it comes to their long-term goal. And if I'm not with someone, in that setting, it makes me very nervous.
Yeah.
I can give you a swim workout and a run workout because I've seen you swim and I've seen you run. And a lot of times I'll take people in the gym and I will take them through exercises, show them this is how I need these exercises done and prescribe a workout based on that. But I don't just blanket say 8 by 10 leg press at 75% max effort or whatever it is. I tend not to go that route. But as a 50-year-old athlete, if that person says I've got 8 hours and and they want to do a half Ironman, so they don't have a lot of experience in endurance, so they don't have a huge aerobic base, it would behoove that athlete to spend at least one of those hours, if not two, to develop strength, and then use the other time for the aerobic building that this athlete needs to be able to go that far. I think it's crucial. I just don't do it personally unless I'm physically with the athlete.
I agree. So I respect that, actually, as a physical therapist, of you not prescribing a lot of strength training and stuff, because, again, you don't know what their body's like. You don't know what their past medical history is. Because do you take any of that into account?
Oh, sure. Anytime I work with an athlete, I have an extensive questionnaire I have them fill out. I'll go through that questionnaire and derive a lot of other questions from their responses.
Okay.
Past injuries, do they have any experience with weightlifting and things like that? How much do you incorporate stretching and all of the things around that? And it's, I do. Okay. I try to get as much information as possible to then be able to prescribe the best training possible for that individual so that, one, they stay motivated and focused, as well as injury free. Because nothing just ruins, your goals. If you can't get to the start line, you're never going to get to the finish line. So,
yeah. I think that's the biggest issue, as you know, working with these athletes. Everybody's always hurt, especially the ones that aren't having any guidance. And I think that's probably the number one reason where a coach does come in handy, because I think, as you know, look at our tri team. There's always somebody nursing something. And when you're training 20, 30 hours a week, I think some of that stuff happens. But if you're training and trying to cram in 8 hours, and you're going, well, I'm going to try to do 13 hours of training in 8 hours, body doesn't like that.
Right.
It doesn't work at all. So have you had any injuries you've had to overcome?
Oh, sure. I had running all those marathons back then. I had patella issues.
Okay.
Probably had some IT issues too, patella issues, just overuse, overrunning, kind of coming up with my own plans and being the optimist, thinking, this will work. This is going to be great. Lack of recovery, lack of fueling, because it wasn't really a part of endurance training back then. I got hurt a lot, sidelined me. So I went to the doctor to get it. I mean, it wasn't surgery or anything. To get our MRI and check out what really is the problem, because I could barely walk. He prescribed putting a patella band under my knee, taking some time off of running. And this doctor in Los Angeles had written a book called "Save Your Knees."
Yeah.
So I went home and read it right away, and I was a heel striker. No one taught me how to run.
Yeah.
I was a heel striker and a pronator because of the heel striker. I hit my heels, rolled inside, pushed off my toes. Yeah. So a lot of stress on the joints. And in this book, I still have this book to this day. Carried it around to 5 different places I've lived for 20 some odd years. Yeah. And it taught me how to run on my forefoot, which was very challenging thing to change. Running mechanics. But I did it. I took a lot of beating on the calves, and it was hard. It was hard to do, but I want to save my knees. So I kept doing it and eventually became the 4-foot runner that I am.
Yeah.
And changing that and having that injury, it actually helped me become a much better, faster runner. I would have never run it that fast unless I changed my foot strike. So that was my first big injury. And I learned a lot about that. It's like, all right, mechanics are really important. Second injury came, and it came twice. My first season racing pro, the big race was St. Anthony's.
Okay.
Best guys in the world were down there, and I was going to line up me and 30 other guys, Olympians, world-class, world champions. I was going to do everything I could do to get shape. And what I knew as a big sport athlete or a big guy sport athlete, football and discus and shot, we were always in the weight room. So I was taking my 15 to 20 hours of training, whatever I was doing. And then I was adding like 2 to 3 days a week in the gym, doing the same pounding on my legs that I was already doing running and biking. So I had probably a month before the race, my IT just locked up.
Okay.
And I had no idea. It was like someone took a knife into the side of my knee, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't run. I could walk. And I had no idea what I did. And, I don't even think I had health insurance back then. So I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't see anybody. I just took some time off of it. Did everything I could do, water running and the likes. And by the time I got to St. Anthony's, I was barely able to run. I walked kind of the 10K in pain. But then eventually it just went away. Yeah. I stopped doing what I was doing and it went away. Second year, all right, I'm going back to St. Anthony's. I'm going to do a little better this year. Same problem. Went to the weight room, did all this hard lunges and squats and everything to make myself faster and stronger, but had the same issue.
Yeah.
And years later, I find out that if I just would have stretched a little bit, the muscles around wouldn't have gotten so tight, and the joints wouldn't have got stressed, and I wouldn't have all this pain, because when muscles get tight, they move things differently that cause all this pain. And then I was just like, you idiot. Why didn't you find this out? Why'd you find this out the hard way? You could have missed a week of training by doing a little stretching or foam rolling. You got us what? So that was, I learned a lot from those injuries, but I wouldn't call that an injury. That's just overuse to some degree. And then the injury that kind of ended my competitive career was I broke my tibial plateau in a bike race.
Okay.
Criterium accident on the last turn. And I have a titanium plate and 12 screws in my left knee.
Okay.
From that silly little bike race that didn't mean a thing. That's an injury where, as a runner, it's the last injury you ever want to have.
Yeah.
That's where you load.
Yep.
But I had a great physical therapist who helped me recover, gave me the confidence that I could get back to doing what I was doing. My surgeon did a great job. And I'm able to still compete at whatever level I'm competing at now.
Yeah.
But that was 8 years ago.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that. So are you building in, recommending any yoga? Are you doing any stretching yourself now? Or what do you do for recovery?
Yes, well, that's an interesting question. That would mean that I'm training 8 to 10 hours a week.
Okay.
That would be untrue.
Okay.
I don't train that much, to be honest.
Well, that was the other question I was going to have, is how much are you actually doing now? Because I know you're so busy doing everything else.
Yeah. I'm when I'm training.
Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah. And say, a marathon, or, I still think I have the ability to qualify for Kona in our age group. I just need the time to train and put all those pieces that we're talking about into play. When I do that, I'm almost always stretching after a training.
Okay.
Working the hips, the calves, the lower back, just doing all the proper things, hitting all those major muscle groups, so that I can recover quicker. Doing a lot of work with the like Normatec boots, trying to generate better blood flow, get rid of some of that hydrogen waste. Really hydrating more, eating properly.
Okay.
Going to get a massage, maybe once every week or once every 2 weeks. Going to the chiropractor, making sure things are moving properly. Okay. Yoga is something I enjoy personally.
Yeah.
I just don't make any time to do it.
Yeah.
I'll stretch for 5 minutes after every hour of training, but I just don't take the time to go to yoga.
Okay. Do you recommend it for your athletes, especially those?
By far.
Okay.
Again, yeah. When it comes to working with 50-year-old athletes, and almost every athlete,
yeah,
my perspective is one that is recovery focused.
Okay.
Nothing, you don't get better if you don't recover from the damage you do from training or just from training itself. So all the programs I design are from that perspective.
Okay.
Depending on what the goal is, to go to the Olympics or finish your first 5K or just get third in your age group at the Trivium series.
Yeah.
None of those goals are realistic if there isn't any time allotted for that recovery process. Yeah. So where you put the workouts on a weekly basis versus the 30% of your intensity and the 70% of your more aerobic based stuff. All right, how do you put all those pieces in play that magnify your opportunity to recover, knowing how many hours you have to train and what other life stressors you have? Yeah. And if you can incorporate some sort of stretching, yoga, recovery boot time or whatnot into that program, that would only make things go much better. You'll be less injured. Your performance gains will be much greater, and your proximity to that end goal or that ultimate goal is so much closer and quicker.
Okay. So currently, are you doing much? I know you're coaching. So are you doing a lot of swimming or biking or running now?
I was, to some degree. I had an Ironman coming up in 5 weeks that is no longer.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot about 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
I was training for a marathon at the end of July. Had the Ironman in September, along with B2B, half Ironman, and then a couple half marathons. So a full fall schedule. But once the realization of COVID, of just the rest of the year being canceled, I just stopped. I really stopped doing that. I went for a run today. I swam yesterday.
Okay.
I do a lot of exercise while I'm working with the kids. I'm riding with them and running with them to some degree. So I'm very active, but I'd say I'm not training right now.
Okay. But you're definitely active because you are. I know you do stuff with them, so that's good. So this is going to be basically a twofold question. So I'm going to want you to think about when you're like heavy into, like you're doing all those events and you're really in full training mode and you're doing events. What do you think are maybe 2 or 3 secrets to your success? And then I want to think of the same thing like with some of your athletes that you're doing. What are those things that you would probably say are most important to them?
In terms of workouts?
No, I'm going to say, so here's the example: nutrition, sleep, training intensity, maybe attitude, family and friend support, and recovery. Kind of those 6 things, or anything else you can think of.
Again, all roads lead to recovery for me.
Okay.
But all the things you just said there fall under that in my eyes. Yeah. Nutrition and fueling for training is really how I look at it, is fueling for recovery.
Okay.
You can go out for a 6-hour bike ride and try not to eat much because you want to burn fat or do whatever. But that might set you back in terms of recovering from that 6-hour bike ride for days.
Yeah.
So nutrition, fueling, that's all going to help you recover quicker. Sleep's going to help you recover quicker. Healthy relationships to people in your life, your immediate life, are going to help you keep your distress to a minimum.
Yeah.
And what we've learned is that any stress, your body reacts to equally. So the more stress you can have in your life versus distress is going to keep your body a little less stressed or a little healthier. So again, recovery is key.
Okay.
And you've got yoga, you've got. But to answer your question, what's the most, if I were to just take recovery, what's the most important part of all those things that fall under the umbrella of recovery? Would I suggest, if you're heavy into training, like we were in this fall, it'd be a toss up between sleep and nutrition.
Yeah.
But I would say sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all tend to, sleep is really so important, I think, for recovery. And yeah, I agree. I think, but we don't get it all. There's so much going on right now, and the stress of what we have. Stress is by far the worst thing that I think we all have to deal with, and it messes everything up. And right now we're in, depending on your outlook of where we are right now, I think most of us have finally said we're done. We're not going to worry about the things we can't control anymore. So I think most of us are, different now than we were, say, in April. It's a way of life now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's it's one of those points where I got to maybe 6 weeks ago where I said, it's not going to happen. I'm going to stop thinking it's going to.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess it's good because it frees you from the attachment to that goal, but it doesn't help. A lot of us get into the sport and continue to train and race because it makes us work towards something. But the periphery of that is that, we become healthier, or we should become healthier. And it makes our quality of life a little better.
Yeah.
So not having that goal kind of decreases that accountability or that natural tendency to get out and do things. Maybe our volume drops by 50%, training 8 hours a week, and now we're only doing 4, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But yeah, and looking at a 50-year-old triathlete that works, has got 2 kids, a wife, and so much time to train, and he's got to do all his training early in the morning or after the kids go to bed. And it's like, okay, well, there's not a lot of time for that most important thing in triathlon training, sleep.
Yeah.
So how do you? So maybe the most important thing in that athlete's case is nutrition.
Yeah. That's good. So who's the or I don't need a name, but what's the oldest athlete you've ever really trained?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know the number. I would say it's right around that 70-year-old mark.
Okay.
Maybe a little higher. But I see with E3 and all the different pieces we have, I've got the luxury and the opportunity to work with, just cyclists or just runners and just swimmers and obviously a lot of triathletes. So I've got 70-year-old cyclists. I've got 70-year-old triathletes.
Yeah.
I think I've done bike fits for guys in their late 70s.
Wow.
That are time trialists. They're not crit racers.
Yeah.
75, I think you do the individual. But yeah, and what fascinates me about that group, that population, is how good a shape they're still in. They're an inspiration because they've they've committed to this, and they've probably been doing it their entire life, in one form or another, but they've never lost the drive to keep training or exercising. And maybe the competitions are helpful. Maybe they don't do any competitions anymore, but they're still going at it, and have some sort of intermediate or long-term goal setting. And it fascinates me that they have, they don't really fall off. And with triathletes, we have a season, and we build up, and then we transition, and then we prep, and then build, do all that stuff again. Guys in their 70s, obviously they have a lot more time to train. They have a lot less stressors in life. But they don't take a day off. They're nonstop all the time, and it's really cool to see. And it's great to see that you can still do at a high level what we're doing right now in our mid 40s, early 50s, and do it well.
Yeah, that's why I love it. I've been involved with the senior games here locally for 6 years, and they have athletes in their 80s. And just talked to somebody, he's just turned 90. He's still running 21 miles a week, doing a run walk, but he's still active, gets out there 5 days a week and still playing tennis. And that just is incredible to me. I mean, it makes me say, okay, I'm not going to sit on my couch. I need to get up and I need to do something, because it just shows me again what is possible when you see these athletes. And it's one of those things, the senior games, I recommend everybody go, whether it's the track and field events or they even do cycling. They go around Country Park. There's a 10K. You got to go out just to see these athletes in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even 90s now, still doing stuff.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating.
I don't want to keep you much longer, but who are those people that you kind of rely on when kind of the going gets tough and kind of helps you move forward?
In terms of staying active and healthy and training?
So I guess as far as that help you get through when training is hard, or right now when that kind of you lean on, who are those people that you lean on that help you get through?
Wow. Yeah. That's a great question. I can probably name a few people. And I will, but I have a tendency not to lean on a lot of folks.
Okay.
In a bad way, probably. I probably take on way too much for myself, thinking maybe this comes back to that you started something, you got to figure out how to get through it. So I probably don't reach out to much people during hard times. I kind of just internalize everything, and that's not helpful. Okay. In terms of stuff like COVID or what's been going on for the last 5 months, if I were to open up to someone and tell them how I really felt, and like I'm frustrated or I'm angry, obviously my wife I've talked to. Yeah. But in terms of, training partners, I've got a couple friends that I run with, that when we go running, it's not training based, it's emotionally based, where we're there to just talk. Whatever we end up talking about just is what we talk about. And a lot of, once you open up any conversation, most things kind of start flowing through it. But my good running buddy, Matt, good strength training friend, Joey, those guys. I've talked to Francis a lot. It's usually the person I'm with for a long time. And when you're out running for an hour, you spend time with them, or if I'm coaching with Francis for hours, we end up just talking about stuff. But no, I don't have any professional that I see, and I think about that a lot, in times like this where it's like, I don't want to train, or there's no more races. And every time I see an email about a race that's gotten canceled, it's like it's growing. Yeah. I'm getting more and more upset and frustrated with the world, not just our little world, and not trying to be selfish, like, oh, we can't do triathlon. This whole world stinks because we need to do what we want to do.
But I'm just going, all right, well, this is a hard place to navigate mentally.
Yeah.
Even with just outletting on your friends and your family, it's like maybe there's someone that actually has some answers that I can take, or answers for me, not necessarily just general answers, and just listening. But I don't know who that would be.
Yeah.
A psychiatrist or psychologist or
Yeah.
some sort of other health professional or counselor.
Yeah.
And I don't, and then I start to question, am I just being narcissistic? And why don't I just go for a walk?
Yeah.
Or go for a run and just sort it out and just feel better about myself and the world in itself. So it's funny how I used to run, to circle back, because I wanted to take some time away from the noise and just get better. And always after I exercise, I think that's why a lot of athletes do this, is I feel better when I get done.
Yeah.
I hate doing it, but I love having done it.
Yeah.
And, kind of the mystery that surrounds us in this place right now seems unsolvable, and it's frustrating in many ways. But going out and exercising and training in this environment can help. So it's like we should all be getting in better shape, even though this is keeping us from doing what we love to do normally. So why do we need an Ironman at the end of the year to satisfy us when we could be training for an Ironman without there ever being one?
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. I think part of what most of us, especially us middle of the packers, are doing this stuff. One, we do it for our health. And then we're doing it for just the accomplishment of doing it. But then honestly, we're doing it for just our training partners. There's nothing better than going to do a group ride, because you're just going to hang out with everybody else. And by the way, you're going to bike 50 miles, but you're hanging out and you're talking, you're finding about what's going on in their life. So I think I view them all as just mini counseling sessions for all of us anyways, whether, we anything is accomplished, but you get it out and you have fun and you exercise, and you're right. When you come back, you just feel so much better. So, that's why Walt, you saw what Walt and I are doing this weekend, didn't you? Is he
that the
tell
escape?
You? Yeah. Yeah. So I have,
is that coming up?
That's Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. So 12 hours of Walt and I roaming around, who knows where we're going to be, where Rich is going to put us. So
it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Problem solving at its best.
Yeah, it's really going to be an interesting thing to see when we're where we end up. And luckily, we're doing it aided, but it should be 12 hours with Walt we're going to have a good time. I will tell you that. So.
Oh yeah, I've spent 12 hours with Walt in many Ironman.
Yeah. Well, on the same course, but on the same course, you're never together. You're a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, it's and it's just great. So in terms of group stuff, I think that's essential. You see a lot of people that love to train on their own, and that's just their thing, and it's great for them. I think what kept me in the sport of triathlon is just a community.
Yeah.
I mean, doing a bike race, and even a 5K to some degree, or a running race, after the finish line and what transpires beyond that doesn't exist or come close to what triathlon has done to build its community.
Yeah.
You get down finished with the race. Well, that's where the fun just starts, and it goes on for quite some time, probably as long as the race itself. Nobody just does a race, gets in their car, and takes off.
Yeah.
And just being around people suffering and sharing that suffrage, I think it's just a way of life, and we're just bringing that into the sport.
Yeah, I love it. So, do you have any special quotes or mantras you use to get you through?
Oh, I've got a lot of them. Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to remember. I mean, I've got a lot of things that I think are funny.
Okay.
So like if, in terms of training, one of the mantras that, I say all the time, whether or not I believe it, and if I say it to someone, I don't expect them to think I really believe it, was a quote I heard one time. It's, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So if you're not out here getting it done or trying to get better, you're not getting better. I mean, you're not doing it. You got to put the effort in. And it's a little over the extreme and over the top. But it resonates with me because it's like, okay. And as a coach, I see it a lot, and I'm motivating a lot of younger athletes that may or may not be interested because they're just out to be on a team or whatnot. Effort is everything. Yeah. And it's not how hard you go. It's intent. If you're going to go for a swim, a bike, or run, you're going to do a sprint triathlon, you're going to knock out this workout. I mean, if you're going to do something, do it. Yeah. Don't go there, moan the whole time you're there, complain that you really don't want to be there. If you're there, be there and do it. Get it done. And then move on. And talking about the whole triathlon, you're going to do 1,000 workouts between now and the race. Not everyone can be, the perfect day. You're not going to feel great, and it's it may be a day that you think you can never do this Ironman. But regardless, if you put whatever effort you have into that workout, you're gonna get better. It may not show up that day, and it may not show up next week, but there's going to be some place in that race where you're going to need what you learned from that workout. Yeah. So if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
I like it actually.
But that's a little over the top. No. I think it's just, I don't. Mantras it's a funny thing because in sports psychology, that's one of the chapters or aspects that we talked about when it comes to tennis players or any athlete. One of the mantras from back then, when I was really deep in sports psychology, was, if you can excuse the language, was F it, fix it, and forget it. Yeah. Get out the emotion. You just did something wrong. You got a flat, whatever. You need to confront it. Yeah. You need to get out the emotion. You're mad. You're angry. You missed a shot or you had a bad swim. Accept it. Get mad. Get it out of your system. Figure out how to move on from there. You get out the emotions, and you have to move beyond that. So you have to forget that. You have to stay in present. And then fix it so it doesn't happen again. So if you can F it, forget it, and fix it, you just move forward. Yeah. And there's, in an Ironman, in a 12-hour race, there's plenty of time to fix all the mistakes we make. Yeah. So that's one of the ones that is stuck with me. It's been 13 years, and we talk about just having a good mentality is set yourself up for success. You have to come in with the mindset that is, all right, I've done all this work. I'm at the start line. I'm healthy. I've done a lot of imagery to identify what it is I need to do on this course at this moment, how I'm going to handle the bike course and the run course. This is my plan A. And then you try to execute that to the best you can, and knowing something might come along the way and you have to have a plan B. Imagery, preparation, and the understanding that it may not be perfect. And if you have that perfect day, celebrate it. They're very few and far between.
Yeah, nothing ends up being perfect. So you're right. You can make it perfect just by your outlook on it. And it doesn't have to be a podium. For me, I'm a very purpose-driven guy. I think you've probably learned that over the years, and that kind of leads me to that last quote, that you see me use. My miles are for. Just again, I use it as a reminder to me of just how lucky I am. And, I'm enjoying this journey every day. I'm enjoying the journey with this podcast and talking with you. But everything I do, I'm lucky that I can still do the things that I'm doing right now. And I'm going to enjoy it as long as I can, because there's no reason to be miserable and, look at all the bad things, because you can go down some very dark holes. So for you, do you have, if I gave you the quote, "My miles are for," what is it for you?
Yeah. When I read that earlier, my first thought was exploration.
Yep.
I'm interested in things that I don't know, and I'm always looking to find out answers to things I don't know. And exercise, or my miles, I'm trying to find things I don't know about myself, don't know about the sport, don't know about the run. And maybe there's something deep down inside me that I've pondered for years. And in the next 30 minutes, I might have some different insight, or might gain some more insight to shifting those pages or files around and coming up with a more coherent thought about all the thoughts that I have up there inside my head. So, yeah, I'm always looking for answers, and I think that's where I started into endurance sports, because you have so much time to learn or experience things, and to spend time inside yourself or within. That's what I got the most out of when I started. And I guess I'm not a really good explorer, because I haven't found what it is that apparently I'm searching for. And that's a good thing. It keeps you in the sport.
It'll come eventually. You don't need the answers today. Eventually they'll come.
Right.
Hey, Matt, that's all I have. I appreciate you taking the time. This is awesome.
Oh yeah, Pete. No, I'm someone that's always looking forward. So to take a trip in the past and kind of look back is something I rarely ever do. So thanks for listening to me remember all those things.
Hey, I love it. And, like we said, it's just so hard that, we get to see each other for such a short period of time. And it's so good to actually, I think, to get to know you a little bit more, and the people that I've spent time with. Because I love those stories. I love hearing, this is just a picture right now, but there were a lot of things that happened prior to that, which I think is important for us to know. So I thank you for being open.
Yeah. Anytime, man. Anytime. I enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and were able to gain some insight into how one weathering athlete approaches each day of training and racing to stay as injury-free as possible. I believe his biggest strengths are his attitude and his willingness to put in the work necessary to succeed as an athlete, coach, and business owner. As he states, most people may have quit after running a master swim group with only 2 people for a year, but he used that time to work on his craft and continue to coach, which is his passion. His work coaching youth football in his 20s provided the foundation for his work with the junior and high school triathlon E3 team. His E3 Endurance brand has grown over the years, and it is not uncommon to see both his youth and adult members of the team on the podium. I should know, because I'm chasing those in my age group at all the local events. E3 Endurance has joined forces with our local Triad Tri team, so I expect to see many more team awards at upcoming Ironman events. Through his sports psychology degree and experience as an athlete, he has the insight to help athletes set realistic goals, but then to work to push them out of their comfort zone to succeed at things they may not have thought possible. Thank you for taking time in your busy schedule. If you find today's or any other episode inspiring, I ask you to consider to join our Patreon program. Details can be found at www.weatheredathlete.com. Also, please don't forget to hit subscribe to this podcast, share with your friends, give me a rating on iTunes, leave me a comment or drop me a line if you feel what it takes to enter the Weathered Athlete podcast. Lastly, no matter how you complete your miles, I encourage you to use the following hashtag, #MyMilesAreFor, as a way to reinforce the purpose of those miles. As always, my miles are for the journey. Pete Perusic.